Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome 108 and Unsufferable frontman Rob Fish to the podcast. Unsufferable dropped their first two songs earlier this year with Iodine Records. Rob talks about discovering hardcore, his involvement with Hare Krishna, how he keeps ending up fronting hardcore bands, his approach to writing lyrics, and a lot more. It was a joy getting to chat with Rob, and I think everyone will dig this conversation. If this is your first time checking out As the Story Grows, welcome. Thanks so much for listening. You can find links to our mailing list, Patreon page, and Discord server in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com. Come hang out. Enjoy today's chat with Rob Fish from Unsufferable. You a big soccer fan?
Yeah, I am. You follow football at all?
No, I do not.
Yeah. No, I got hooked. God, I think it was like after our first European tour back in 1994. I went and saw a match, and that was it. Kind of got hooked and followed since. So
Nice. It's funny. When me and my wife went to Spain in September, and we came back, we brought our son a Barcelona jersey, and he wore it to school. And like most of the kids are like, they're either African or they're Hispanic of some kind, and they were just like, Barcelona sucks. And he's like, I don't know. He has no context, so it was very funny.
yeah, it's a different world. They used to be one of the best in the world, and I mean they're still probably pretty damn good. But yeah. It's funny.
Yeah,
kids are like that.
Yeah, but they're 6 and 7 year olds. They're just like, I don't like that team.
Where do you live?
DC.
Oh, DC area. Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Right now, Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
So I've been out here for about 10 years, but we'll get out of here sometime, hopefully in the near future.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just ready for a new adventure.
Yeah, that makes sense. What took you to Arizona?
Work.
All right.
Yeah. I've moved around for work quite a bit over the years.
Yeah. I was listening to your chat with Keith on the new scene. You worked at Kinko's. Is that who you're still working with?
No, I left. I was with Kinko's and FedEx office, but I left them back in 2014, and I worked with Massage Envy for a number of years, both at their corporate office, but then I was the CEO of a group that owned 95 of them. We started with 20, and then I built it up to 95, and now I do the same thing, but with a company called European Wax Center.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, nice. all boring stuff.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Edison, New Jersey.
Okay, what was growing up like?
I mean, it was interesting. 70s, so not a very different world than you have today. But I grew up with, I guess when I was first born, I had some foster siblings that lived in the house, but they were primarily gone by at least the time I start to have any kind of memories. But I had a good mother and father. My dad worked all the time, take care of the family, and my mom, worked a lot. But then, as I got a little bit older, my teenage years, she got really, really sick. I was bedridden, and then passed away when I was 17.
Damn.
But I mean, all in all, I mean, I had kind of a rough childhood. Not because I didn't have like loving parents, but I think I struggled to feel connected to them and to just about everybody around me. And at one point, there was, or during, I was physically abused, by my mother at certain periods, because she had a lot of she was struggling with a lot of things mentally and physically, and that's how she grew up. So kind of I had a similar experience with her. And then I was also sexually abused not by my immediate family. So, that I think I was already a kid who didn't feel very connected to my surroundings, and that just, exasperated that 100 times over.
Yeah. It fucks everything up.
Yeah, I couldn't really figure out like what I was or what life was. And maybe I started to get some ideas, and once I got to high school. Before that, it's kind of a blur. I got in a lot of trouble. Didn't do well in school. Typical stuff.
Yeah. At what point does hardcore kind of come in? I imagine you find like a community there and start to feel connected with hardcore, right?
Yeah, I mean, so it was really the first day of high school. Before that, I was a hip hop kid, and all I cared about was hip hop. But I started to kind of not be as interested at the time because it was becoming more popular. Beastie Boys, put out their record, which I liked a few songs, but like that whole mentality was kind of like the people I thought I was escaping from. So anyway, the first day of high school, I ended up being in like a shop class, wood shop class, and there was a kid I had known years ago, and him and I started talking, and he was a full blown metalhead at the time. And, I was talking about hip hop and what I loved about it, maybe what I kind of was, again, kind of starting to feel like, I don't know, like, this is what I love about hip hop, but I'm not sure anymore. And, it's kind of funny. He was a metalhead, but he's like, hey, I got to give you this tape. And it was a tape with like Black Flag on it and a few other bands. And it like right then and there kind of changed everything. Cause it reminded me a lot of what like drew me into hip hop early on. Which was that, of course, there's always like party songs and things like that, but most of it was about like, kind of their experience trying to navigate a world that, again, very different than me, but, a world that was against them or felt like it was against them. Right. And so even though, I had a very different experience, but I had a similar feeling. And so I really loved that. But like the more it became about like partying and money and all that stuff, like I just didn't get it. So punk rock, that was like the perfect fill-in. Yeah. And I was completely 100% addicted from that point on.
Yeah. And both those scenes kind of grow out of this place.
Oh, absolutely.
Like obscurity and something new and fresh and just like on edge. And there's an attractiveness to both of those.
Yeah, and my friends and I, we were all skateboarders, skated in the city, went to CBs, all that. Like it was all very intertwined at that time. Yeah. Like, hip hop was always a predominantly African-American culture, Spanish culture. But, it wasn't weird to be a white kid into hip hop and graffiti and skateboarding and punk rock, right? All those things like kind of melded together in a lot of ways. And maybe towards the end of the 80s, that separation became pretty big or became bigger. But, 1985, it was, it was all very similar people, similar backgrounds, similar goals with music, I guess. Yeah.
Trying to create something out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very easy for me, and I always loved hip hop, but I really got drawn into punk because it had a similar thing where it was like trying to figure out your place in the world and talking about things that bothered you. And I especially needed that. Although, it was years, even though I had been in a band, I think I got into my first band in 1989. So I was, 15 years old. And it was a band called Release. And, we did a few records and played a lot of shows, did one tour. But I didn't really write anything for the band. It really was like more, I wrote a few things towards the end, but I think I was kind of drafted as a singer because I was a bit of a, just weird dude with a lot of strange and energy that people wanted to kind of figure out what the hell I was up to. So, but it definitely like hardcore punk rock was really, really important to me because it made me feel like one, I'm not the only one that feels completely, alienated with his surroundings. Yeah. And even if I didn't necessarily find a ton of connections in the punk scene, the fact that we were all trying to navigate similar things was way more than good enough for me. Like that really helped me a lot.
Yeah. Did you know you wanted to be in a band at some point, or was it just kind of you were just hanging out and they were like,
yeah,
you got tagged in?
Yeah, they were just like, you know, like we a few friends and I, like we all loved Vision, and I remember we went to a practice of theirs. I don't know if you know who Vision is, but like old New Jersey hardcore band. And we went to a practice of theirs, which I think was at this girl Stacy's house, who at the time was the singer Dave's girlfriend. If I remember right, it was her house. But there were a lot of kids there, like so it was almost like a mini show, right? Because at that time, hardcore shows, you know, unless you had a national act, were actually pretty damn small. Yeah. Basements were more than big enough. Anyway, they played a show, and I remember afterwards, like me and the drummer from Release, this guy Chris Capp, who was like the greatest dude ever, still is. But him and I were talking to Dave, and we were just gushing about like Vision, and he was just like, "You guys need to do a band." And it was like, I mean, at that point, like Dave was just, he had that kind of like place in our lives where it's like, well, I guess we got to do a band. Yeah. And the problem is I don't know how to do anything. Like I'm not good at anything. And I was, you know, I'm somewhat of an introverted personality in most respects, and kind of shy in that way. But they're like, you're going to sing in the band. I'm like, all right. And for some reason, like getting on stage doesn't bother me whatsoever. You know, I can get on, you know, we've played festivals in front of, you know, 10,000 people. It doesn't mean anything to me, but sitting at a table with 6 people I've never met before, and I'm like an anxiety. So it's kind of like a funny thing, but you know, but yeah, I had no aspiration to be in a band. But you know, I just kind of went with it.
Yeah. Is it just kind of this thing that rolls, or like, as soon as you started doing it, you were like, no, I love this.
No, like even like when that band broke up, I didn't think I was ever going to do a band again. And one day I was hanging out with, so I grew up with Ari Katz, who sings for Lifetime. Mm-hmm. And I had introduced him to Dan Yeaman probably about 8 or 9 months before, because I had found a flyer Dan had put up about wanting to do a band. And I checked it out, but it wasn't really for me. And I ran into Ari, who again, I was like, you know, thick as thieves, like best friends with in high school, and told, you know, he mentioned, you know, hey, I want to sing in a band. And I was like, oh, I got to hook you with this guy. Anyway, you know, months and months and months later, Lifetime's a band. And this label had put out like the final record by my band Release. And so I had a copy of it, but I didn't have a record player. So we were over at Ari's house. We were listening to it. And Dan and Ari are like, yo, you're going to do a band again. And I was like, I don't know. And like, again, like they booked a studio, and like I called Chris Zuzai, who played in Release, to come and play with us. And I was in a band again. Like, so, yeah, no, there was never a point where I was like, oh yeah, this is what I do. Yeah. Maybe a little bit later, but even with that second band, it was still like this idea of like, why me? Like,
you're just there, young and something to do, and not like, when I'm 50, I'm still going to be doing this.
Yeah, I had no idea, but I was like, all right, like whatever, I'll try it. Why not?
Yeah, that's cool. At what point along the way does like the Hare Krishna scene come in? And
yeah, I mean, I started looking at like reading books and kind of looking at Eastern religion at a pretty young age, because again, I was abused, and mm-hmm. I don't know, I came across it first, I think, with something around Buddhism, but the idea of karma. Yeah. And I really was like, whoa, like, right. Cause I don't understand. Like, again, like my mother was physically abusive, and, you know, I knew how much she loved me. So it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Right. And then, you know, the sexual abuse, you know, it's like, and then again, feeling alienated from everything. It was just like, so karma, like kind of was the first thing that got me looking at books. And, I was probably 15 when I visited the Christian temple for the first time. And, you know, would go every, not necessarily every week, but every few weeks. And, you know, look, I despite singing in 108, like I was never a God guy, right? Like I've never been a guy who read a book and was like, hey, literally 5,000 years ago, this thing happened. Like it wasn't, I never had that like mindset. It was more of a thing of, I needed something, I needed answers. I needed something to help me understand like why I felt the way I did. And that was the perfect thing for that at the time.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if it was maybe on a release record, but definitely like by the time like Resurrection 7-inch came out, I already lived in it. Like when I introduced Ari to Dan, I then moved into a Hare Krishna temple. And so I didn't see them for about 8 or 9 months really.
Yeah.
And then my mother passed away. And then I came home, and that's when they're like, all right, you got to do Resurrection. So I lived in a temple early on, but I kind of knew like, okay, this isn't for me in the sense that like a lot of the things that they talk about, I really am attracted to and really like, but there are certain things like I think are bullshit, or I just didn't believe in. Right. But I also was like, well, does that really like, does anybody really believe in everything? Mm-hmm. Right. Like that idea of just going like, look, like this is helping me. It's making me feel connected to a world that to some degree that I've never felt connected to. So I just pursued the parts of it that I liked and that made sense to me, and didn't really worry about the rest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think 15 is when I first, started seeing, I mean, look, you knew who they were, right? Like I went to shows in New York City, right? Fucking, we all love the Cro-Mags. Like, so, there was that thing, but I think I started, kind of like checking it out. And at the age of, but especially like at 16, by the time I hit 16, Release was, based out of South Jersey, right outside of Philly. So I would always go down to practice. We'd stay the weekend and we'd go to Philly, and we did the Govindas, like the Krishna temple, or like I said, going into New York, going to CB's, sometimes you'd go to the Krishna temple.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just something for you to like try to make sense of the world and not like, I found my religion.
Yeah, exactly. Which was a lot why early on in 108 I joined, quit, joined, quit, and joined. Because it was just like I was, and Vic always said from day one, like, dude, I don't care. Like the same things that you don't like, I don't like. And some of the things that you just don't believe in, like whatever, like they're not that important. Like, let's talk about the things that we have in common. And it took a while for me to be able to feel comfortable with that, because again, I'm not always the most comfortable guy. So representing something was like really kind of confusing to me, because I wanted to talk about it in respect to like how it was helping me, or how it played a part of my life. But not, hey, this is what I'm doing, you should do this. Mm-hmm. And, all you had at the time, the template was really like a shelter. Yeah. And that's what they were. So again, like I thought shelter was good, but like I didn't want to be like, I had no interest in like getting people to go to a temple. And that was not it for me at all. So anyway, it took a while for him to convince me that, look, you can do your own thing. Like, don't worry about it. For me to find like, all right, let's do it. And that was it.
On Wikipedia, it says like when you left the band in 2010, it was you did not, or were unhappy with the religious association with the band, trying to find something different. I mean, if that's true, it's like interesting, because I came up through the Christian hardcore scene. Okay. And so like, it's the same thing where people are like, we were teenagers, we're adults now, we don't have the same beliefs. Yeah. Trying to break free. And
it wasn't exactly that, because again, like I've always really, for the most part, the things that I liked back then are still the things I like now. Mm-hmm. Right. It was more of, Vic, where Vic was in his life, Vic, and I don't know if he just did his whole interview with Antimatter. I don't know if you saw it, right? But he really, like, what he said is like incredibly true to like who he is. And, he had a period around that time where he got back into Krishna consciousness, or Vaishnavism. He, didn't get back into ISKCON, but got back into like like really heavily into the philosophy. And the way that he was talking about wanting to really incorporate that into the band, and just sort of like kind of do what he told me we were never going to do back then. Yeah. So it wasn't like, now all of a sudden, like I stopped going around Hare Krishna temples in like the 90s. Like, so it wasn't anything new. It was just more of like, all right, like he's really getting into this and wanting to use this to express his appreciation for this philosophy and different things in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, I'm just, like it wasn't it wasn't a big negative thing. It's just like, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
But then about a year later, we all talked, and, I think he had kind of resettled, and, we found ourselves back in similar mindsets.
Was there something about the New York or Philly scenes at that time that kind of drew people to Krishna or straight edge or like whatever?
The Philly, like I went around the Philly shows and things like that, but I was more of a New York, North Jersey guy. I think it's most kids that got into punk and hardcore, like felt a disconnection. Mm-hmm. And so that's one element, right? Then you've got, kids who are straight edge and vegetarian and like very like purpose driven. Mm-hmm. And so if they have that disconnection and then they're into these things, like it's kind of like the gradual, but not to say gradual next step, because you could do all those things and not believe in God, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
I think a lot of it was that. And the bands were fucking good. Like, who you get, like, what band, that you would associate with that time that you wouldn't say was like fucking good.
Right.
Like Cause for Alarm, fucking the Cro-Mags, right? Mm-hmm. Shelter, like that first Shelter record's fucking phenomenal.
Oh, good. Yeah.
After that, it gets less and less. By like their third record, I just couldn't listen to any of it. But like the Perfection Desire is an amazing record. Mm-hmm. Like, good God. And 108 was fucking good. Like we could play, mm-hmm. right? Like, and so I think that was kind of what drew people in. But, again, like I wasn't all that involved to really know, like, how much of an impact it was having in this. I knew like a lot of kids were going, but I didn't pay much attention outside of that, to be honest.
One of my favorite releases that you've done is the Every Scar Has a Story EP you did. What was the like genesis for that project? And like, it's a total like different musical mindset.
Yeah. It's funny. Tom had sent me a demo of songs that he had done years before, like probably 14, 15 years ago, something. And these songs were like incredible. Like I love them. And he wanted me to sing on them. And I loved them. But I'm not a writer. Like I have to be in kind of like either a not a great place in my personal life or feel like there's a lot of bullshit happening out here for me to be inspired to like write something. Like I'm not just one of those guys who sits around and writes or writes in the pad. Like I just don't do that. I'm not an artist. So anyway, so I ended up telling him, saying no to doing the record. even though I think and still think those songs are like unreal. And I don't even know if he ever put anything out with them. But anyway, fast forward to 2019, and I was in this interesting phase because I have two kids. They're now 26 and 22, but at the time, my youngest was getting ready to they were senior in high school, right? And they were going to move out as soon as I graduated, go back to Portland, Oregon, where we had lived prior to moving to Phoenix. And so I really was just thinking a lot about God, so much of my identity is being a parent, right? What's this next thing going to be like, right? And along with that, I had taken on my first job as a CEO of a company. So that's happening. And then all of a sudden COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And think about from a job perspective, leading a company during that period is a seasoned CEOs, that was hard.
Yeah.
For someone that was new, it was it was really, really difficult. My identity was sort of okay, what am I what's my world like now that my kids are leaving? Reflecting on that, who I was as a parent, what I was good at, and maybe what I wasn't good at, and some of that, kind of reflection. And anyway, that's going on. And one day I was on Facebook, and Tom had posted a 15-second soundbite of something. And I listened to it, and I was like, oh, shit. So I sent him a note. I was like, yo, send me some songs. He sent me, I think, 3 songs. I think he sent more, but there were 3 songs that really resonated with me musically that we ended up, recording together. I'd love to live by him and be able to play with him more. But yeah, it was a fun project, and it's interesting too because I didn't know this, and I think it was when we were doing press for that record or whatever, and I found out that his mother worked in the high school that I went to.
Oh wow.
And I was really fucking bad in high school, so I'm just oh my God, if somehow she did remember me, it probably wouldn't be a great memory.
Yeah.
Right? What was really funny was he mentioned that she, I think she was a guidance counselor, if I remember right, but she also taught home ec. And the funny story to that is, and I don't know if she was my teacher, but it was in 10th grade. So, the summer of 9th grade, we're all we want to go to CB's, right? The problem is you got to be 16 years old. And I think we had already gone once or twice, but people were getting caught, right? Because we're all trying to use the same birth certificates. So I pulled the short straw, and that meant I had to enroll in home ec.
Oh.
So I did, and I lasted maybe a week to 10 days, just enough time to make 3 or 4 different versions of every kid's birth certificate, every hardcore punk kid. So there's probably at that time I don't know, 14 or 15 of us who just skateboarded together, went to city together, CB shows, everything. So I made all these versions of everybody's birth certificate, and then once I did, I never went back. But I remember he told me that I was just oh my God, I wonder if she was the teacher I had, and I hope I didn't really cross paths with her because I probably was a bit of a jerk. And he's such an amazing guy. So.
Yeah. Let's talk about this new project, Unsufferable. What was the genesis for this?
Yeah, I mean, sort of a similar thing. Dave and I were friends online. We had chatted here and there, and that guy's always got working on a record or working on a project. And he happened to again post a soundbite, and I heard it, and I was like, "Yo, that's awesome!" And he's like, "Let's do it together." And I was like, "Done." And, again, I think he had sent me maybe 6 or 7 songs, but there were 2 that really, kind of like resonated. And he, both of us, I was, kind of, I guess, internet friends with Ryan. Like we've crossed paths before and, have similar friends and interests. So we're friends on Facebook or whatever. And Dave was like, hey, I want to ask this guy Ryan to play bass. I was like, all right, awesome, cool. And, we kind of interacted and, whatever, talked via Facebook and all that. And we're like, yeah, cool. So he ended up, recording the song, or some songs with us. And, it was, I don't know, it was, again, kind of the right time. Like there were things happening in the, not necessarily in my life, but now more in the world around me that really were like irritating me. And, the songs were like a good soundtrack to that. So we, hooked up and, got Ryan in, and then I, they sent me the songs recorded, and I, went in and sang them. And then, we were originally going to do it with one label, and just, the guy who owned the label was just going through some stuff, and, it was just not happening in a timeline that we thought was reasonable. So, we reached out, sent it to Equal Vision and to Iodine Records, and Casey, hit us up like right away, and him and I were on the phone within like a day, and we decided to work with them. So, it's a cool project. It's called Unsufferable, and you got myself here in Arizona. Dave is in Montreal. He goes to school there, art student, and Ryan is a teacher in North Carolina. So, all live in very different parts of the world, or parts of the U.S. or parts of the world, because I guess Dave is in Montreal. And, we're all in very different stages of life. Ryan's got like a lot of kids, a lot of younger kids. Dave's in college, getting his master's in a art program, and you got me here in Arizona. But it's been fun.
Yeah, it's like the cool thing about the internet is you can connect with people wherever and have this common background and create together with the internet, and just like have this project and be proud of it, and not ever have to be like in the room, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would love to, and I think like when it comes time to record our album, we will get together. We'll do most of the work before we get in a room together, but then I want us to get together and like really like play the songs and think about them and make some tweaks. But yeah, I mean, it is a cool thing. It's funny too, because I haven't been in a band that lived in the same place and actually did practice since 1992. Yeah. Like, so, for me, it's funny, like the technology's made it easier, but I've kind of been doing that for forever. Like 108 we did not live in the same places. I was in New York, Vic would be in New Jersey or, Maryland or places like that. Triv, our bass player he came down, he moved from Boston down to New York, and, we always had different drummers. So, we would get together to write songs for an album, and then practice, a day or two before tour. And that's about when we saw each other. We didn't really see each other otherwise. So it's not that weird of a world for me.
Yeah. Yeah. With each project, you kind of have a different vocal style. Like, is that hard for you to try to like tweak your vocals to the music, or is it just like, what the song needs?
I don't know. I mean, again, like I am not a man. Like and that's where, like, again, I get a lot of times, I get these people who send me like these amazing records, and I never do them because I'm just like, what am I going to do to this song that makes it better? Yeah. Like, and can I think of a way to like do it where it doesn't feel like, yeah, of course that's how you're supposed to play that song. You know what I mean? Like you can hear a pop song in your head and what the melody is, and like, I know that I'm not that, I don't have that distinctive, like I have a very distinct voice, but it is not, so what I'm looking for. Like, I can't do a lot with it, right? Like I kind of got like one thing that I can do with it. So that's what makes it hard, because I have to I have to be in that mental space, that emotional space. And then I have to find something in it that I'm like, okay, I think that's kind of cool. Like, not that other people couldn't do it, because again, there's nothing all that special about my voice, but I could do something with the song that people might think, that I think is cool and that I think people would enjoy to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like the contrast of listening to like Every Scar Has a Story, which is much more melodic in the screaming as opposed to the Unsufferable stuff, which is just brutal. Like,
Yeah, no, and I would love, I mean, again, like I wish, with Every Scar we could play, like, because it's funny, like I play like I've always played really, really heavy music, but I haven't listened to really, really heavy music since probably 89, 90. Like I listen to mostly, like, if it's not hip hop, it's typically more melodic, whether it's indie or, 70s shit or, the Beatles or Bob Marley, stuff like that. Like I don't listen to like heavy music. Even it was funny, like looking at your podcast, I looked at it like a few minutes before we got on, and I was like, God, I don't know who any of these bands are. Like the only one was Prong, because I love Prong. And a funny story about Prong, I was living in a Hare Krishna temple, and Shelter was on their first tour, and they were going to be playing like in Connecticut and at City Gardens, right by the temple I lived in. And Inside Out, and I thought Inside Out was fucking awesome, and Quicksand, right? Like, okay. So I was like, all right, like I'm gonna go to that show. And then Chris Capp, who played in Release, him and I were talking. He's like, yo, like because I loved Prom, like Beg to Differ, like, and everything before that, like I loved it. And our friend Dale was living in Tampa, and for some reason he's like, hey, on this date, Prong is playing in Tampa. We should fucking drive down there. And it wasn't even this date. I think it was like this weekend. Like he hit me up. He's like, this weekend. And I was like, Shelter, Inside Out, 45 minutes away, or a 15-hour drive to Tampa to see Prong open for Flotsam and Jetsam. Fuck it, let's go to Tampa. And
oh my God.
So I did know Prong. But anyway, like I like some of my favorite bands, like even hardcore bands, Dag Nasty, like Wig Out of Thankos, Verbal Assault, like they're all their catalog, but especially Trial, like, oh my God, Lifetime, like I can name, the Descendants, like a ton of like melodic bands that like I love, but like when I express myself with music, it's not that. Yeah. Right. Like, and so doing something like Every Scar Has a Story was really cool. But I feel like for me to do a band, like I feel like for me to do a heavy band, it could be any setting. Yeah. But for me to do a band like that properly, I think it would need to be a case where like we all live in the same place and we can get together and play. Yeah. And we can write the songs together and change things around a lot. To fit like what I can do, but also like what I think would be really like interesting with my voice, because it is very limited. Yeah. Yeah. You talked about writing lyrics and how it's changed and over the years. Like, I mean, I imagine with Unsufferable, you're just looking at all of the bullshit we're dealing with every day. Like, how has that evolution been over the years? Do you approach each project with like, a different outlook or no, I don't. I mean, again, like I'm not like, I think to do that, you have to be disciplined and talented in something. And like, that's just not my thing. Right. So it really is like, just like, if I'm at this point where it's like, I got some things I need to like get out. It's usually a mixture of things that are external to me, and that's really what the Unsufferable record is it's more external stuff. But typically there's songs that I'm writing about how I'm feeling and shit that I'm going through. It just didn't happen on this EP. Yeah. But it's always the same thing. Like, again, I'm not a guy who, like, you can send me something I like and I can like be like, all right, I'm going to write a song for this. Like, either I hear it and I fucking know. Yeah. And I might not know what the words are, but I know, or I don't. And I've learned that don't try to force it if you don't, because I just, again, like I'm not, all I have is my delivery, if you will. Yeah. And that has to come with like feeling something very intense and personal. And so if I don't have it, I don't worry about it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like once I know what, like, then like once I say like, okay, this is what I want to talk about, like I typically write it and it's done. Like I might have to change a word here or switch around something to fit the cadence of the song. but the words are typically just like, I just sit down and write it, and then that's it. Like, I don't go back and revisit it and pull stuff around. Like, it's just more of like, okay, well, it had 4 lines here, but the verse will only go 2 times. So like, let's figure out where else to put this. But it's not like this amazing process. Like, I love to watch documentaries of musicians, and like, I'm always just like, oh my God, like, this tells me more than anything. Like, this is not my calling, but I love it. Like, I think it's so insane, and I'm like, so envious of it. Like, really, like a few weeks ago, my wife and I went to see Explosions in the Sky, and I've liked them for a long time, but I've never seen them live. And it was a Monday night, and with my job and all my travel, like, Monday nights, man, going to a show. But it was like the Saturday before, and we had some friends over, and I was just like, yeah, I really want to see him. And they're like, you got to do it. And so I did, which again makes me sound really old because it's not that difficult a decision. But a Monday night at my age, with what I do is tough.
Yeah.
But like, watching them play was like so cool because, one, they sounded amazing, but I'm like, they could be doing this at 80 years old. Like, my shit's got a shelf life, right? But they could be doing this at like 80, and it'll probably look and feel and sound different, but amazing.
Yeah.
Like, so I just, it's a funny thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, I talk to a lot of people, and, some people just have it in them. They got to make music, and they're always trying and striving and creating new projects. And you're just kind of like the accidental hardcore lifer. Right?
Yeah. So that's why, like, I can go years without a record, and it's because, like, if I'm in that space or I have that need, like, I've got all these amazing people that I know that, are like really gracious and like, have told me like they'd love to do something to me at some point. And so if it hits me, I know people to hit up and say, hey, I want to do something. So I'm definitely really lucky that way.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys released these 2 songs back in January. Is the plan to try to write and record more later this year, or just kind of just let these 2 songs be and just whatever happens?
Well, we already have 10 songs for a record. The music for it, I got it right around the time that I was getting ready to play the 108 shows back in October. And just with the nature of like getting ready for that, and then just, the end of the year, and, again, with like my job and some heavy lifting things I have going on there, I just said to him, look, like, I'll start working on this in like probably like May. Yeah. Right. Like, and we'll, I'll send you notes, and we can, switch up some songs and switch some things around, but we have the base of 10 songs already there. Nice. They sound awesome. But again, it's a matter of me figuring out like, okay, what do I do with this that will make it interesting or make it better than what it is. So that's, the plan I think would be to record the album this year, to come out sometime next year with Iodine.
Yeah. Do you want to try to play shows together, or just like?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be cool. Like, we talked about, we got asked if we wanted to do the fest, and we talked about it. It just, it's not practical, especially with Dave. Like, he's getting his master's. He's, in school full time. Like, that's not easy. And, again, just with my job, things are a little hectic. And so I would love to. I really hope we get to at some point. Because I think that would just be fun to kind of then see it in that setting and experience it in that setting, in a live setting. But even if it's just us getting together to practice and get these songs like finalized right before we record, like, I think if we do that, I don't care where it is, we'll probably make them play a show then.
Nice.
Even if it's in front of 5 people, like, who cares? Like, it would be interesting to be able to do. Yeah.
It's funny because like I got the Unsufferable record, and if I'd read the press release, I would have known you're in it. But I just put the 2 songs on, and I was like, "This is fucking great." But it wasn't until you were on the New Scene Pod where I was like, "Oh shit, that's Rob from 108."
Yo, that's funny. That's funny.
I had no idea. I was just like, "Oh, this slams."
Well, that's cool. Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's I've gotten to see some reviews or people talking about it, and it's been cool to see that people enjoy it, and I think the record will be intense. I think it'll be a lot more personal than maybe the EP. Again, the EP was really more kind of focused on the external things going on, whether it's the ridiculous, discussions around a woman's right to make decisions about her body, or, the other song is kind of interesting. It was written, initially it was going to be called CRT. And the whole idea was like, look, like, the fact of the matter is, like, if you want to heal the past, you have to talk about the past. Yeah. And, unless you allow yourself to heal and allow the people around you in the world to heal around you, you'll never move forward. You won't prosper. And, then, as, all of a sudden, everything happens, with Israel and Gaza. And, that was just a really, like, again, different thing. But very similar in that, like, it didn't start on October the 7th.
Right.
Yeah. Like, this has a really long history, and you can think, and I think most people that I've ever interacted with think Hamas is fucking horrible, right? But that doesn't that doesn't mean that Israel can do what it does or should do what it does, at least in my opinion and my experience. And I was like, this is another example of, like, understand, like, the context and the histories. And if you want to, if you ever want to get to a point, whether it's in personal life or in world affairs, like, you only move on and prosper when you come to terms with how you got where you're at. And, you make corrections to make up to whatever degree you can for the things that you've done. And, hopefully at that point, then people can move on and prosper. But otherwise, like, this type of shit is just going to continue. It's going to get worse and worse. And it's a tough thing. I've always, dreamt of going to Israel. My father's side of the family was Jewish, and I have this connection. And there's a lot about Israel, that on the surface, I think is, like, unbelievably beautiful. But, now I'm just like, God, I don't know what to think or feel here.
Right. So. The political structure over there is so fucked, and, like, the genocide they're committing right now is unthinkable.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't post about it and shit, because, like, what are you going to say? Like, I'll talk to people. Mm-hmm. That's not posting on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, like, those two things, like, really, like, thinking about, again, like, our histories, thinking about, thinking about how, like, politics in America now is very much, I mean, there's always this funny meme, like, when I heard the dead Kennedys when I was 13, I thought they were right. And when I listened to them at 18, like, I thought they were, they were a little over the top, right? And then at 30, I thought they were nonsense, and now at 40, I realized they were right.
Yeah, right.
It really is like a football teams, right? It's like two rival football teams, and I'm like, you can think Hamas is fucking horrendous, but think Israel's wrong.
Yeah,
you can think that Trump is a moron and not think that Biden is some guy who, his face should be mounted on a mountain. Like, it's such a weird thing. And so I think that was, those two things are really kind of just maybe, like, they all happen in this time span where I'm just like, I want to write something.
No.
But going into the record, I think it'll be a little bit more personal and reflective. Like there's this guy that I know, and I've had the honor of knowing him for a few years and doing some work for him, and he's a amazing hip hop artist. And his name is Killer Mike, and he's in Run the Jewels. Yeah. And last year he put out a record, or I guess it was this year, put out a record called Michael. It's his first solo record since like 2013 or 2012, something like that. And it is like, it just won 3 Grammys, which is amazing. Like 48-year-old man, really, he's had a Grammy before with songs with Outkast, but I think that's, to do that, in the rap game at that age is pretty unreal. But like when you listen to the songs, what I love about it, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, is like we all have this vision and this aspiration for who and what we want to be. Right. Yeah. And like, we really like, as much, whether we want to admit it or not, like that aspiration is like really, really dear to us. But we also have all these contradictions, and, whether it's things from the past or things you struggle with today that don't line up with that aspirational vision of yourself. And what I love about that record is that he, talks in such like a personal way about like why he's done the things he's done, why he doesn't necessarily take back some of the things he's done, but also like when he looks back, how he wishes he could have done some things differently. And it was just like this very like personable and like honest record. And, it's funny, like I kind of look and go, how many more records am I really going to do? Right. Like at some point, like I've played the last show and I've written the last record. So, I told the guys, like, I want this to be a very like it's going to be a very personal record for me. And it's going to be, a similar kind of approach in the sense of, again, not musically, obviously, but that idea that like, we have all these like hopes and aspirations, and then we have the reality of who and what we are, and the regrets and the flaws, and trying to figure out like, how do you reconcile that? And how do you allow that to fuel you to get to that aspirational self versus, make it seem like it's something, that you should give up on because you're just not good enough. Yeah. And I think that's just something that, I've realized with myself, like, and I think a lot of people are like that. Like there's this, this saying, it's called imposter syndrome. And it's like a funny thing because, I know for myself, like I have that at times, sometimes it's at work. Sometimes it's when I'm supposed to be a father, sometimes when I'm supposed to be a friend. Like I have this person that I aspire and want to be, and I'm falling dramatically short of that in some way. Yeah. And I think that I feel like I need that to be a record that I do, because that sums up my life. Like I, have an amazing life, amazing kids, an amazing wife, I have a good job, I've got amazing friends, but I have this like emptiness and sadness, and a lot of it's driven by things of the past, whether it's things that I did or said, or maybe things that I didn't say or didn't do that I should have. I feel like I've got to find a way to express all that. So that way I can, hopefully, the one thing that's good about my life is with every year that I've gotten older, my life's gotten better. Yeah. Since probably the age of 35, like every year has gotten better. And so my hope is that, if I can have, do that type of record and release that type of, those type of feelings, that will help, really propel me for, the remainder of my life, because I sure as hell don't, that's coming. So I want to make the most out of whatever time I have left.
Get
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune. And now I'm learning as I listen along, and the wheels are turning, and I started a song. One good word and I'm gone. Oh, as the story grows, the more I want to know, the more I want to show you. As the story grows, as the story grows. You can create something lasting and great, something passionate and real. And I'll bring in my own good feelings, I'll sing it with meaning. Let's just attack it and never look back. It's wild and fantastic. All together at full power, we're so much better. What's that word I'm missing? If you